Chandra, will help navigate the digital tightrope. Our moderator, Mr. Pankaj Chandra, is a media veteran across NDTV, CNBC, Star TV, and is the founder of Zenora, a company in ESG reporting and trainings. Thank you for joining us, sir. Mr. Dhinendra Kashyap, a senior IPS officer, has over 2 decades of distinguished service in law enforcement and national security. Mr. Kashyap has held key positions in Kerala Police, the CBI, and the NTRO, earning accolades such as the President's Police Medal for Distinguished Service. Dr. Shruti Sharma, a distinguished academician, sustainability strategist, and a consultant with over 23 years of experience spanning academics, research, and industry. Can we please have a round of applause for all our panelists? And yes, Dr. Amritash Rai joining us.
Very chat with yeah. Yeah.
Hello, hello.
May I request everybody to come slightly forward, if that's okay with you? Come. Come a little forward, the chair, to the tables in front. Where some of the chairs are empty, and we'll be talking to some of the empty chairs. And thank you so much for staying back. I'm very happy that some of you have decided to attend this session, a very important one. So, I was in the morning, till the morning, I had everything very well planned. Sorry, I'm going to stand a little and sit if that's okay with you. Because, like a lot of these people, I'm also a little sleepy. So, after a lovely meal, it was a 10-course meal. So, I was just thinking, ki digital stress and how do I address this entire issue? So, I remembered something that one doctor told me. He said, things like diabetes, things like pollution, they're all here to stay. You can't remove them. So we have to learn to manage them and stay with them. So, the screen time is there to stay. You can't do anything about it. You will have to survive and live with this fact. So, what we have to learn is how to manage it effectively. The other thing which is important is, and sorry, that's somebody's phone?
There's a bag there.
Okay. The other thing that I think we have to be careful about, and why I think Mr. Kashyap will add a lot of value, that screen is a stepping stone to the society now. Earlier, if you have to move out of your house, you will step onto a road or probably a dark alley, and there are certain precautions that you have to take. Similarly, screen is now your window to the world. So, what is it that you can do from early childhood, as counselors, as parents, as teachers, that will probably give us some checks and balances to move into the future, and also prevent crime or something, that some habits which we should be forming. So, getting on to this panel, my first question is to Dr. Shruti. I know you're a professor of sustainability, and sustainability means a continuity, something which has to go on. It has to be a continuous process. So the question I have is that, as teachers, you have been propagating a lot of screen time for students. It's reality. Let's face it. So teachers are giving you teachers are today giving assignments, giving things for students to follow. So I think teachers have legitimized screen usage to a great extent. And where do you see? And I know you have to. You have to shoulder a lot of responsibility on behalf of all the teachers. But it's a question that I want to ask: how do you manage that? Do you also are you conscious of the screen time that you are imposing on students? And is it a responsibility you feel, or that's really not your concern?
Thank you for the question, Pankaj. A very relevant question you asked. as teachers. So, for me, I can say that I'm a professor, and when my students come to me, I think they've gone through the school education, and whatever the things have been there, they've already been exposed to the kind of education, digital education. So the responsibility, my work becomes easy. The responsibility is more on the school teachers. Where they come from, where the grooming happens, the growing up years are. And when to answer that from a child's perspective, we stay in a hyper connected world. And when you look at digitization, or when we look at digital education, it's a double-edged sword. So it is a performance enhancer, and it is a persistent challenge also. So you have to balance between both. Like you cannot completely withdraw yourself from the digital world, and you cannot completely immerse yourself into digital world. And that is where currently, when we look at the screen time, which is one of the biggest concern when we look at school children, there has been a cognitive overload, I think, which all the teachers and all the educators would be feeling here. So we need to strike a balance somehow, I feel, so that somehow that cognitive overload, does not cause anxiety, does not cause mental stress, which most of the children are dealing with. And I think, just to add on, the previous session I was here, and she spoke about in adolescence during 14 and 15. The panelist spoke about your prefrontal cortex. So, prefrontal cortex at the age of adolescence, which is 14 to 15, is still at a very formative age. Formative age in terms of decision making, in terms of, handling impulses, is at a very formative age. So, for a child who is 14 or 15 years of age, giving them exposure to the screen time, and this cognitive overload which we are giving, they're not able to handle them properly. So I think it becomes, we need to be more responsible as educators. We need to be more responsible as parents, towards finding a right balance between the screen time.
So before I come to Mr. Kashyap, I have a question for Amitash. How is this giving a lot of stress to people? I mean, I have a mobile phone with me. To what extent can it be so stressful? I mean, why are we even doing is it so serious an issue that we have to get onto a panel to figure this out?
True. Look, it is. Phones are highly addictive, and the content is highly addictive. So the phone is really carefully designed to keep you on it, because it is what it's selling is your concentration. That is the commodity it sells to advertisers. So it is, and the average screen time is 7 hours. And if you think about it, 7 hours, if you're on a screen and you are awake for like 12 hours, and we are generous, you are at work for 6 or 7. So, what now? The question is, what else do you do other than being on your screen? So, it is very important, and it has long lasting effects, especially screen time exposure for young children. They actually did a study in teenagers, and their face to face contact, eye contact, social and emotional words in their communication has gone down over the years. And the intervention they did was forcible removal of technology for a period of time. And the results were that it improved social communication and interaction amongst young people. So certainly it has an effect, and it has a potentially long lasting effect. The earlier so there's no right amount of screen time, but for young people under the age of 2, less than 2 hours a day. Otherwise, it can have developmental consequences. So it is a serious issue because it's so widespread. Unlike drugs, this is widely available, and the content that is now coming out, and I'm sure other panelists will be able to learn, the content that is coming out is not benign, because it can be very extreme on either side. So the views of people are getting further and further apart, either on the extreme left in the views or the extreme. So you slowly have to become or the content has to become more and more extreme to keep you engaged. So, and I see students or children who in clinic who harbor those kind of, we're talking about adolescents who harbor those kind of views. They didn't start out by harboring those views. They have had so much content thrown at them that's how they think now. So it's a serious concern. And then there are a few blocks between thinking and acting. But if you are in that, there's a term called echo chamber. So these things are echo chambers. So everyone is saying the same thing, and usually everyone is unhappy about something. So it is a serious problem. At the pointy end, it's very, very serious.
So, Mr. Kashyap, I would want to ask you that, is this a gateway to some sort of a criminal activity? And, if you abstain from screen time, has any study or your experience shown that it's helpful in the future? And if at all we putting our children to screen time, what are the things that as parents we should be conscious of, red flags that we should look out for? What's your view on that, please?
So, thank you, Pankaj. So, first, on the word screen, we all love screen. When few of us were on the other side of your 40, we loved screen for our Ramayana show or Chitrahar or Mahabharat, whatever it was during our times. We love the screen right now. All of us here are carrying a mobile phone. It's going to stay. We all know it's a true one to be true one to say that we are going to change it drastically. So we have given to ourselves this gadget of communication, and we have to live with it. Initially, any such revolution, IT revolution, came faster than any other one that we have read. So, I mean, we are talking of digital stress. Yes, it is there, and it's not there only with the children. It's there with most of us as well. So let me be age neutral and not be capricious to our kids only. See, kids get what we give them. So if as a parent, you and I have given them a screen so that he or she finishes his or her food or homework or whatever. So we cannot now wash away saying that kids are under digital stress because of this, that. No. But the second part of this. See, internet is a beautiful thing. We all know it's a beautiful thing. It's the way we use it. It has given immense opportunities for seeking knowledge, for seeking information, which was not there in our time. I give an example to my daughter. I just have a daughter, a 16-year-old daughter. And when we were studying in Delhi University, way back in 90s, so if you had to find out about anything, if you are preparing for any examination, you had to go and dig out from places. I mean, you have to go to a library and find Hindu to know something, or go to library to know, and then it will take hours together. The generations now we have provision, and they have acquired. They have acquired the skill to get that in a much lesser time. So it will stay. Now, what is our role as parents? Because most of us, we have not called the adolescent kids over here or the children over here. So for as a parent, I mean certain clear-cut responsibility that we have here is that how much we engage with our child. Are we telling them what is there, what is not there? In the physical world, we were the mother or father or brothers, whatever, they will tell them that, okay, do this if this happens. Do that like this if this happens. Over here, many of the parents do not know what this virtual world is all about. So I have been on Facebook, I have been on Orkut, I have been on Facebook, I have been on WhatsApp, I have been on Telegram. So I don't know what Insta does, although I know a bit, but I don't know what Snapchat does. So for parents, for elders, we should know the technology and what technology is offering. So if a technology is offering, or if an app or application is offering things that which are not, so a message can be self-destructive. A snapshot, you see a photograph and it goes away. So only the parent knows how I mean, it will be very difficult to know what the child is doing. So first and foremost, as parent or as elders, we should, our teachers, whatever, we should equip ourselves with the technology. We may or may not use it, but we should know that this is what exists, or this is what, in what way it is going. So that mode of communication, or that gadget, or that digital world, what is offering, should be known. So that will not only give us a way into the minds of our kids, or a way what people are looking into these days, but also will skill ourselves. Second, telling about engaging the kid. I mean, Professor Sharma will tell this better. But then, as parents, unless we are ready to change our mode and be ready to accept some of the change which every 10 years the generations are bringing about. So people who are born after 2009 are now a different generation. Yeah. So we didn't know. So the Z and millennial and all those things have gone. So the young generation, they are very innocent, but then we are feeding them with so much of technology. We are feeding them with so much of this. So we need to find a pathway for their control as well. We come to know of different offenses. Maybe I'll come to that later, and maybe on that part, Pankaj. So I think you can.
I think I would want to really, on the defense of everybody who's 40, 50-year-old here, I must say that, and also for our children and some of the young students who are here, please go back and tell your friends also. Unfortunately, we are not trained at all to handle this. Imagine, you were asking me, Devang, the other day about the pager, that what was a pager? I was trying to struggle to explain to her what a pager was. It was really an SMS service with a device as big as a phone.
Extinct like a dinosaur.
So imagine what we have been through. And, our problems is something which the generation cannot understand. And tomorrow they may look back and say, digital stress, too much screen time. Frankly, we are grappling with screen time. I have 2 screens in front of me because we've not been trained how to handle screen. We've just been given screen time. And today we are trying to catch up with our jobs. So we've not been trained that only look at your emails 1 hour a day or 2 hours a day. We are checking our emails through the day. And similarly, you guys are on Insta or whatever through the day. So we have no idea what to tell you. We're also having a structured way. And I know a lot of counselors here are smiling because they pretty much understand what I'm trying to say. So to your defense, we are struggling as much as you are. And please, as the younger generation also has a lot of responsibility towards the older generation and, talking to them and figuring this out together. Because the next generation will figure this out, the generation after you. But this one, we both have to figure it out together. So I think only putting the blame on us or the youngers is not really the idea. So again, back to the doctor on the panel here, who's the expert. I mean, sorry, not Dr. Shruti, but Dr. Amritash. Is there any research to show what a behavioral ideal scenario should be at homes or at your workplace to detox from digital stress or to balance it?
Look, I think generally the research suggests less is more. Can you hear me? Yes. Yeah. So less is more. There's no ideal time, as little as you need. I guess, or as little as that is enough. So people have done different kinds of. People are completely tried detoxing from the phone. That's not really possible. You can't do a complete screen time detox unless you're a hermit and you live under a rock. So you need it for your job, you need it for your work, you need it to socialize. But having certain times which are free of any screen time are also very helpful. The other research that shows us that has shown us is where screen times are harmful. So at night in your bedroom, that's definitely harmful. Harms your sleep, even if you have a blue light filter in front of it. Certainly, going off to sleep watching YouTube or TikTok or Snapchat or Instagram is not helpful. It completely breaks your sleep architecture. And once you are able to reduce your screen time by whatever, so I guess saying because I've tried to do it, or maybe I'll go down from 5 to 2. It's not going to happen. So 5 to 4.5 or 4 to begin with is a more realistic and achievable task, and you have to work at it. And the research suggests access is everything. If you carry your phone around with you, you will use it. There is no other because it is very powerful. So you will use it. You will pick it up. The other research shows don't take the phone in the bedroom and to the toilet. Those are the two places where you shouldn't be taking a phone. And then reduce, if possible, the amount of short form video that you watch, because that has a clear impact on your concentration. But the most serious issue that we see, in fact, in Queensland where I work, they have what they call the police has with the psychiatry, the Queensland Fixated Threat Assessment Center. It's called QFTAC. It's a very fancy word, where people who express a fixated threat towards something or someone are referred. And we get young people who are referred to that center because they make threats to bomb schools or they shoot up schools. And almost invariably, the inspiration is from the internet. And there is a concept of, so, we all wonder why negative news spreads really fast and sticks. And there's research behind that negative views are much harder to extinguish than positive views. Positive stories die out very quickly. Negative stories tend to get the thing on there. So the adolescents, the incels, for example, there's a whole subculture, and there are all of these negative subcultures, extreme left subcultures, extreme right-wing subcultures that foster in, on chat groups where everyone is talking about the same thing. And it is arguable that individually people would have less extreme views, but as a group, they tend to have much more extreme views and tend to egg each other on. So that research also shows very clearly to become a threat, it needs other things. And one of the things that can now very easily get is online penetration of the views.
Thanks, Amritash. Dr. Shruti, given that you're a professor of sustainability and more screen time and more usage of computers, laptops, and all that, what is the effect that it has on environment and social? Two things specifically.
Okay. You second time highlighted I'm a professor of sustainability. I feel left out somewhere. This is not that conference. But yes, I'll come back to your question later, environment and social. Let me pick up the social component. I've the professor in me, the moment research comes in, that professor in me wakes up. And I've been hearing, I want to add up some humor to it. And then I'll back it up with a longitudinal research study. So there is a saying that every generation feels they're more intelligent than the previous generation before them. And they feel wiser than the generation who's after them. So this is a universal thing which every generation feels. I think Pankaj also mentioned here. And that, again, backing it up with a longitudinal study, every generation has struggled and has thought that any new technology which comes with the next generation is going to ruin their lives, and they need to be helped. If you look at that cross-generational longitudinal study in 1950s, it was thought that the boomers were there, the baby boomers, and it was thought that Elvis's moves are the ones, and which is a fact, Elvis moves are the one which are going to ruin the generation next, and they're going to be diverted from the studies. And then came the cult culture where, the boomers felt the cult culture will ruin. Then came the comic books. My generation was comic books. My parent used to, restrict my comic book timing. And then came my son. When I look at him, he is now 24, another generation where I felt video games, and they're so, when you look at the video games, I felt this is one which is going to ruin their thinking. And now talking about the smartphones, which is we are talking from a digital age. But then trust me, when we look at this generation which we are dealing with is Gen Alpha. So the ones who are there after 2010 is Gen Alpha. Every generation there, the research says there's an IQ increase of 2% to 3%. So whatever we are thinking, the next generation is way ahead than them. So they are sorted. I think in the previous panel also, Dr. Amrita were discussing that it's not about the children. They understand what they are doing. I think it's the other problem. So there is certain unlearning we have to do as parents, as an educator. We need to get into their shoes. We need to understand this technology better, because I feel there is a digital loneliness which is there. Because as Mr. Kashyap also pointed out that, yes, though we are also aware, Pankaj has two screens, I'm also on different portals, but the kind of, the kind of awareness and the kind of digital exposure which happens to a 14, 15-year-old, and the kind of portals or the kind of accounts we are not there. So for us to be educated, it will take a lot of while. And the children know how to steer their way because they've grown up with those gadgets. So these things are the second language which they've grown up, unlike us. So for us, we have better control, but the children, they don't know how to control. So they find their identity, where I think most of the identity crisis which we see. So their identity, the real self and virtual self, which we are struggling, the line has been blurred. And thanks to the ecosystem which has been created, call it Meta, it's such a behavioral impact as it have. I was, reading about the Netflix CEO statement, Reed Hastings, and he said that he was asked, the Netflix CEO, who's your biggest competitor? He said, sleep is my biggest competitor. So we need to create that kind of an engaging content which would not let you sleep, because if you will sleep, I will lose my revenue. So understand the business models which are currently prevailing here, which is so detrimental. And this is what your children are being exposed to, and we cannot control. Before I move to my environmental and social, there was a statement which was very casually made in 2011 by Steve Jobs. So Steve Jobs and Bill Gates both gave a statement that we don't allow gadgets. Steve Jobs said, I don't allow iPad and the gadgets to my children who are below 15 years of age. And they're sent to the schools where below 15 years you are not exposed to, because these are those tech giants who've created all these tools. They know the detrimental effect. Dr. Amritash was mentioning about, the chemical beings secreted in the brain. So when you watch a mobile phone, or when you're scrolling an Insta reel, your brain secretes dopamine, and dopamine is the same a chemical which is secreted when you drink an alcohol. So you are opening bar cabinet to your 14 and 15-year-old, and you're not even telling them how to handle the impact. So I think with us parents, more responsibility to unlearn and to relearn their language, which is digital. They also feel quite lonely there in their way. They feel a lot of emotional rejections, which they feel on a daily. Acceptability, social norms are there. So that is where we need to also be a part of it, understand, and I think, take care. And to talk about the environment part, where that's how does it impact? If you look at the environment part or the carbon emission part, I think Google's total emission to the world GHG is 8%. So though we feel that the tech companies don't have emissions, but they're contributing bigger, and they are impacting the social well-being of people also. So we need more positive engagement.
Actually, what I was referring to is, those images which have come, what's that called? Ghibli. So I just discovered Ghibli images a week back, and I'm told that the more people are trying to create those images, we're putting pressure on those huge, massive data centers and the farms, which is causing a lot of stress on the environment. So my point is, what if instead of telling people that using screen time, because the least that everybody cares about is their health. and insurance companies have been grappling with this problem for many years. So, what if we were to tell people that, if you reduce your screen time by 2 hours, probably it'll help you cut 50 trees? Do you think that is a possible avenue of getting people to become more conscious? That's something which I wanted to understand.
I don't think so. I think my students, they are sustainability students, my master students, that would not resonate. So
Even lesser than our help, we can lesser for the members. That will not work.
we're still struggling as sustainability, advocates. We are still struggling with that. It would not resonate with the children or the next generation. It is not still resonated with the policy makers. But yes, I think. But when you look at the Ghibli thing, where we look at it apart from the emission part, there is a data privacy issue also, and there the algorithms are there which are again which are a matter of concern. I think we need more laws, we need more regulations in and around, and we may need more awareness and sensitization as far as Ghibli is concerned. So
Okay. I have a very mixed feeling after getting to know about the responses of you students here, because I have been trying to figure out what is it that people, because telling people that screen time is bad for your eyes is not helping. Screen time is taking away, this is not helping. Yeah, Amrita, you want to say something?
I was thinking an idea could be like in some health insurers will give you money off your insurance if you do more than 10,000 steps.
Yes.
And they will install an app on your phone.
Yeah.
to do it. If they started giving you money off your health insurance, if your parents saved money, if your screen time went down, or young people got money for less screen time.
So let me confess, my insurance company does that, and they wanted me to download the app. I didn't download because I thought that if they get to know कि ये उतने भी step नहीं लेता, मेरा premium ही ना बढ़ा दे. So अभी तक I'm doing fine. But what if the other way around is true? They say she doesn't even take those minimum steps and they will increase my premium. Okay. So coming to back to this subject, what about data privacy, Mr. Kashyap? I want to ask you that the way we protect our houses, where we stay, safe places where we stay. Today, the device is the window to the world, and there are certain guardrails that we have to build in, and these are supposed to be inbuilt as habits to us, which will also hold us in good stead in the future. And I think only because we lose track of those guardrails, those simple I accept, I agree, kind of things that we do. And then somebody is talking about Blinkit, where you just have to say you're above 18 and you can order cigarettes or whatever. So how are we tackling that issue in the country and relevant to children?
Okay, so the data privacy law, it's on the anvil. You all know they had asked for the comments from the public, so it's likely to come up this year. So
Okay, it's good.
yeah, it's come up this year. That is what. But then, who teaches privacy to the children? So it's the mothers generally who tell children what to do and what not to do. When this digital world has expanded, sometimes the mothers or the father, they have not been able to fathom that out, that what to do or what not to do. In generation like us, parents were not very comfortable in talking about sexuality to the kids, and so some of us here had not seen. Whenever an advertisement with regard to sanitary napkins used to come on TV, the girls in the family used to either go away or put the eyes low, or even the guys. So such was the taboo with regard to things sexual or things even menstrual. So this needs to be changed at a faster speed, and as parents, as elders, we need to tell the child what to do and what not to do. So, for example, since the topic mentioned about cyberbullying, so if I can just take a word of there. So, how many of us have told our children that if you make a fake profile, so it's the impersonation, and impersonation is punishable by this, and one can go to jail and have fine both. And if you go to jail, and you will not get a job, and you will have this. I'm just talking about one impersonation. What about stalking, cyber stalking? After Nirbhaya case, the 354 amendment, which ABCD, which has come, you cannot get into anybody. You cannot stop a lady, especially for male children. So, So there are laws. So even if the data privacy law come, how much are we able to or ready to tell the or pass the relevant information to our next generation? So this needs to be one of at least solutions. This would be one of a solution which would actually educate the generation that okay, if you do this, bullying was there in our times also, but then it was different because you were only exposed to the bully either in school or on the street. That had changed with coming of digital technology. That had changed. It's now all pervasive. There is no limit of time. And second is anonymity. So who is bullying you, who is harassing you, one doesn't come to know. Although all these are offenses, anybody doing this, all are criminal offenses as per the BNS now or the IPC earlier. So have we been able to tell a kid that okay, if you do this, it would you can be booked under the penal code or the BNS now. So somewhere we have given the technology, we have given the gadget, but haven't given them the rule, or at least have not told them the rules. So unless we are able to do that, and some of us even would not know. Some of us here, if I ask, would not know. And then if you expect police officers to come and tell you, as soon as I landed, I heard Dr. Swati Kedia, she was telling about that for drugs, the kids don't open to police. So that was the first line I heard. And others, that's not my job. That's not my primary job. It's the job of the counselors, parents, much more. We have a role. Police has a great role in controlling the peddlers or even educating if the chance or opportunity is. But then it's more of a social issue where we have all our roles defined. It has to be more. A lot of onus is on the elder, on our generation, to educate them about the issue, about the whole criminality or whole about of this. What causes stress? One is overwork for entertainment. For on the digital the eyeball that they get is you get into some dopamine was somebody mentioned that for dopamine you keep on doing this. You go from one deal to other or whatever. But then there are other aspects as well. So that has to be the number of hours, how much it can be limited. Dr. Amthans was saying that at least before sleep, the 3 to 1s we read, at least if we can have that. No phone at dining table has been in most of the houses, and it works. And then the conversation between the generation. So what my co-panelists were saying that yes, the next generation is more intelligent. We all know, but when you cross 50, you realize that your father or your parent were no less intelligent and no less wise, if I could say, than you are or your kids are.
So thank you so much for this. I think you've simplified this problem so beautifully that what I have understood is that it's not very different than the previous time when there were no digital phones. There was bullying then, there is cyberbullying now. There was stress then, today there's digital stress. all one needs to do is be conscious of this. And I think a very important perspective that you've thrown is that we ourselves don't educate the children or use that language. Stalking somebody is a crime, and even doing it digitally will continue to be a crime. So thank you so much for that. I think it's a very important takeaway. Now, some closing remarks from Amritash and then Dr. Shruti.
Yeah, so I guess it's a really important issue. And being the father of two sons, I guess I'll tell you what I did for the education. I didn't go that much in detail, but I said three things. I said, one, whatever you say online is permanent, right? It can come back to bite you 15 years from now. Two, don't say anything online that you wouldn't say to someone's face, because to someone's face you can take it back. You can say, I'm really, really sorry, but when you say it online, it's there. And third, really importantly, I said, don't receive or send any pictures. You have to be clear with young people. So, and I said those are the three things which you really. I didn't say it's illegal and everything else, but I think I tried to make it as simple as possible. Those are the three things. We're not going to say to someone's face, don't say it online. It's going to be permanent, and don't send and receive stuff, and don't forward stuff, because that really gets you into trouble legally.
Thank you. I think this has been a very insightful discussion. When I look at the digital, when we look at the digital stress part of it, cyberbullying research says 37% students face cyberbullying, and cyberbullying triggers it triggers the same thing in the brain as physical pain. So it highlights the same. So it's like if you're being cyberbullied, it is as equal to your physical pain. So we should not underestimate it as counselors, as parents, as educators. But this is one, when you look at digital technologies, as I said when I started at the start of the conference, that we have to live with it. This is a hyper connected world. It is an enabler and it is a challenger vote. So we need to, we as parents and educated, we need to find a middle ground where we can participate with our children in this, on their digital journey. As sir rightly said, there is to be certain rules and certain do's and don'ts. They have to be educated. We have to be educated as parents, as educators, and we have to handhold our children to in their digital journey. We cannot leave them alone. So this is something we cannot keep ourselves away from it. That yes, this is something which would not cause that harm. Handing a phone to my child, would not cause that harm. Maybe he's 18. Maybe they don't have the kind of challenge, because we have not witnessed that growing up. That does not mean it's not real. So their challenges are very real, which our mind cannot process it, because our generation has not grown up handling phones, or we have not been targeted to the cyberbullying or the kind of emotional suppression. Coming back to what I want to say is that we live in a world where there are multiple challenges, where there are a lot of problems. So a problem of climate change, I know, because I work very closely in this field. One of the problems with climate change has triggered is mental health problems and anxiety in the children. So there has been research which says that. So there is already climate change which has already related mental health, sleeping disorder, anxiety to children. And on top of it, there is this whole new world which this generation does not understand, which we have exposed our children to, which is the world of, the mobile phones or gadgets, which we are not aware of. So what we can do is, we cannot ask them that don't do this, because the child would not understand that. Maybe they would not do that. Maybe when we say that, implement a digital curfew. So that digital curfew, yes, we can tell them, but the moment the child is, in his room, he will try and ways to, get into that. Now, there is the last thing which I just want to say here is the child will anyways use, the digital media. You cannot take the child away. What you can do is you can make them learn about the positives. You can help them regulate it. You can be a part of friend who can help them navigate their digital journey. You can give them love and affection, because I was reading a psychology article. I mean, after the adolescence, the Netflix series which came in, there were a lot of debates which I read as a parent. That when a child falls prey to cyberbullying or gets into that, generally he's looking for validation. So there is a certain kind of a validation where, unfortunately, our generation, when we look at our generation, we have course corrected learning from how our parents behaved with us. And there are certain things we said, this is not the way we are going to behave with our children. We are going to handle our children. We are going to tackle them in a very different way. So, tackling them in a different way, what we do is, at times we sugarcoat everything. And when we sugarcoat everything, our child who's intelligent than us, he knows that this is his flaws or these are her flaws, thinks that we are the trust deficit increases with the children. And that is where they look for certain support and validation. And that is where digital media helps, enables that. So in terms, we as parent, help them, provide that kind of an ecosystem, nurture them, take care of them, they take care of the emotional part of them, so that they use the digital media, but they don't seek validation there, so that they don't fall prey, and that is where they use it in a constructive way. So they are part of the digital world, because you cannot be not be a part of crowd. You have to be the digital, but you have to use it more constructively. Seeking validation is, with the parents, with the other friends who are there. And with the digital media, you can only use them as an education or maybe for other purposes. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was very insightful, and I think there should be an entire learning process that we as adults need to go through. And thank you so much, Mr. Kashyap. You've simplified it so well. Any closing thoughts on this?
Yes, just 2 lines. One, whenever you come to know of it, please report. Either you tell your parents, if the parents know, please go to police. Please bring it to the notice. It's not something which is stigmatized these days. Bring it to the notice. And it's not the fault of your child only. If somebody is bullying him or her, it's not his or her fault. Please bring it to the notice of the environment. Let the process of law and way forward take place. Otherwise, the stress goes further up, and that's why we have so many cases of suicides or such unnatural deaths. So this is, let's go, because we have made the laws. Society has made the laws, so we must use the laws for the purpose. That's thank you.
Thank you so much. And with that, we come to the end of this panel. And thank you so much, our esteemed panelists, for bringing such insightful words of wisdom. And I got to learn a lot from all this. And the very interesting key takeaway is that just do the right thing. I think that's very important. And if you think that something is not right, do go ahead and report it. So with that, I will conclude the session. Thank you so much.
Easter favorite you Easter Siki us Skishix Anis Smekbea Yonesi. Thank you. It's okay. And there is some fire. Can we come? This is yeah.
Guilty. It's a bucket at the axe. There's a black one.
Vote of thanks करना है. It's a machine there. The state and Alison is a cake. Distance are there. That's
Very quickly,
we're at the right TG. Ilika will come back. I now invite Dr. Amritash Rai to kindly deliver the vote of thanks.
Thank you. This is the last bit, and I'll try and keep it as short as possible. So, first of all, look, thank you for all of you, to all of you for attending, and we couldn't have hoped for a better interaction and a more enthusiastic audience than you. I thank all our speakers and panelists who've given us their time through their busy schedules, come to us and really engaged with us, and it was a really engaging and positive discussion, and I really enjoyed the day. I guess when I read ads for events, they'll say, "Oh, this is going to be revolutionary. It's going to be a paradigm shift in thinking." Has it been that? No, it's a conference. But I'm certainly wiser now than I was in the morning, and I really enjoyed the discussion. And I think that's all we can hope for from these things. And I hope that we continue to engage. And I think last but certainly not the least, I want to thank our team, our Vedika and Parth, for being such wonderful MCs, all of the volunteers who engaged with us, helped us, Professor Rizvi, our senior advisory board member, Pankaj, and then of course my co-founder and my dear friend Vishal, the Children Plus CEO, and yes, and Shaili, the senior member of our team, without whose guidance we couldn't have completed half of what we did. So I think thank you very, very much for coming, and hopefully we'll see you at another event or interact with you in other ways before that event. Thank you so much. Please join us for tea and coffee or water, whatever you prefer.
It was multiple steps.
See, so